Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Threshold Weekly Community Call. This week we have a full group of special guests. We have Wormhole, Arbitrum. We also have Mike from Balancer. So we're going to talk about Bitcoin everywhere today. If you guys want to kick us off, and I'm going to go around and ask everybody to give a really brief intro, just who you are and where you are contributing to. I'm going to start off with my co-host, Colin. If you could just give a brief intro to yourself, please, sir.
Hey, happy Friday, Ashley. Well, I'm Colin, known as the Kalboski. I recently joined the Marketing Guild committee, and I'm here actively contributing. So excited. And I'll hand it off to MacLane if you want to go next.
Thanks, Colin. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. I am MacLane. I am one of the co-founders of New Cipher, which is, I guess, one of the legacy networks that merged with Keep to form Threshold Network. And now, of course, we are one of the contributing teams to Threshold.
Hey everyone, I'm Mike B. I am on the BD team at Balancer, and I do many other things at Balancer. I've been here for over 2.5 years now, and I've been in crypto since 2013. So yeah, been excited to hear what we have
An
to talk about today.
OG. Hey, Anthony, good morning.
Hey, good morning. I'm Anthony. I work at Wormhole in BD and Ops, and great to be here, guys.
Thanks, Anthony. Hey, Peter.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I work on the partnership team at Offchain Labs, the team behind Arbitrum. Really excited to be here today.
Thanks for joining us. And good morning, Brian.
Morning. Thanks for having me on. I'm a contributor to Threshold and drive a lot of the business development for tBTC.
Awesome. I'm going to kick us off with a round of questions. I'm not going to direct these at anybody in particular. So if you feel like this is your domain, if you don't mind chiming in. So let's start off with, can we briefly introduce Arbitrum and its main features?
Sure. So, Arbitrum is an optimistic rollup that's built on top of Ethereum. And the way that that's different than something like a sidechain. So, for example, I used to work at Tendermint and Parity. A sidechain has its own validator set, and you rely on the security of those validators, whereas an optimistic rollup posts the data back to Ethereum, and that's how you have more of that Ethereum grade security. So if Arbitrum goes down, you can still replay your transactions back on Ethereum. And so the amazing thing about Arbitrum is that it's able to lower the costs by about 90 to 95%. We're also working closely with the Prismatic team, which we acquired on things like EIP 4844, the proto-dank sharding work that's going to further lower costs for rollups. And so, anyways, right now, what that all means is that today Arbitrum is the leading layer 2 for Ethereum today. So, from a TVL perspective, it has somewhere around 5 billion in TVL. I believe it's third in DEX trading volume and has over 1 million ETH that's been bridged to the chain. So we just have, a ton of teams that are building on top of Arbitrum 1, which is the optimistic rollup. And then we also have another chain called Arbitrum Nova for gaming and social that we have teams building over there. So that's Arbitrum in a nutshell.
Thanks so much, Peter. That's really exciting. Okay, so Brian, I said I wasn't going to put anybody on the spot, but tell us how is Arbitrum making tBTC more accessible? What are the goals of the integration? What is tBTC? How is Arbitrum taking Bitcoin everywhere?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things we're most excited about from a tBTC and Threshold perspective with the launch on Arbitrum is, tapping in and building on the Arbitrum chain and the existing community. It's one of the, the fastest growing L2s out there. There's a reason we picked it as sort of the first partner that we would go to market with for the tBTC expansion. and leveraging Wormhole as part of this integration for the bridge directly, it unlocks major growth for tBTC. And the other sort of aspect of the partnership is we wanted to make sure that folks would have a place to interact with tBTC directly once on Arbitrum. And we got in touch with the great team at Balancer and decided that, hey, this would be a top place for folks to engage with tBTC as an asset, and spun up a couple of different Balancer pools directly, went through the governance process there, and we're excited to say that we're live with tBTC on Balancer, on Arbitrum, powered by Wormhole, and bringing Bitcoin everywhere as a result.
Incredible. MacLane, I promise not to put anybody on the spot, but I'm going to do you next. I've heard you speak about this many times. Tell me, WBTC, tBTC, all the other different options, what are we trying to do here? Decentralization, why is that important? Why is tBTC going to be so big? Why is it a huge opportunity? Why are we tackling this at Threshold now?
Sure. So, I think our ultimate goal for tBTC is really to create the bridge that Bitcoin and ETH DeFi deserve. Obviously, like WBTC is ubiquitous across DeFi. They've built a great product. But I struggle to imagine that, a centralized wrapper around Bitcoin is really like the end state of DeFi. If we fast forward 5-10 years and we're still all using a tokenized Bitcoin that's custodied by a single for-profit entity, I think that's collectively a failure case. And tBTC is essentially trying to create a more robust, maximally decentralized, maximally permissionless, maximally censorship-resistant bridge connecting Bitcoin, which is the premier digital asset, to the DeFi ecosystems on Ethereum L1, on all of the great emerging L2s like Arbitrum, as well as all the other non-EVM chains that have growing DeFi ecosystems. And I think that's sort of the tenet behind, I guess, our cross-chain slogan of Bitcoin everywhere. Obviously, tBTC itself, supports a bridge directly from Bitcoin to Ethereum. And because we've been able to partner with Wormhole, we've been able to sort of greatly accelerate like the second piece of that, which is expanding out beyond Ethereum to Arbitrum first, and other chains, and basically anywhere where there's a thriving DeFi ecosystem, we think tBTC should be the canonical Bitcoin representation, so that everyone who is LPing, lending, borrowing, doing anything else with DeFi as it relates to Bitcoin can use an asset that I think strives to match the ideals of Bitcoin itself.
Awesome. Thank you, MacLane. I think Peter touched on this already, but 90% lower fee. So how does the integration with Arbitrum into tBTC, what are the main benefits to taking your tBTC to Arbitrum? Peter touched on lower fees. Did you say faster transaction times? Peter, tell us the benefits one more time.
Sure. So what Arbitrum does is it handles the execution off-chain on another chain, and then it posts the data back onto Ethereum, and that's how it's able to get the lower fees. I think MacLane did a good job of summarizing this, but the amazing thing about tBTC is that it's a more decentralized Bitcoin peg that's out there, and I think when I first saw the demo of tBTC at the Polychain offices, I thought it was really promising what Matt and the team was working on. And what Arbitrum's really doing is, because it has lower fees, where it's able to enable more use cases. So that's why we're starting to see solutions like perpetuals and options-based protocols and things that you just can't do on Ethereum mainnet. And that means that there's a ton of opportunity here to bring tBTC to the Arbitrum DeFi ecosystem and set it up for success. So there's money markets, there's DEXs. There's a whole bunch of opportunities on top of Arbitrum that the team can take advantage of, sharing those benefits with the lower fees.
That's incredible. I'm going to open this question up to anybody. Can somebody quickly tell me, like, why is decentralization so important? And I'm really trying to lead y'all to tell me how Ren wasn't decentralized and the catastrophic effects of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you just gave a good example there, like the last year, you know, and I don't speak about, you know, Bitcoin bridges specifically because it's just obviously what we know pretty well. But even beyond Bitcoin bridges, like the last year and a half or so have been, I think, a great demonstration of why decentralized technologies actually matter. You know, obviously we saw this like cascading failures that was, you know, realistically, like I think what was interesting about this last cycle is that a lot of these cascading failures were like sort of relatively limited to centralized entities like, you know, trading desks, hedge funds, centralized exchanges. They were just like over levered, and you know, they had this just basically catastrophic failure. And what was interesting is like a lot of the DeFi primitives actually performed extremely well. So, you know, AMMs kept working, lending protocols kept working, stablecoin, like crypto collateralized stablecoins kept working, other than with the obvious exception of UST, which was kind of I guess, like an endogenously collateralized stablecoin. But I think that was like super promising, and I think showed like, you know, why we should continue to build things in this space. And with bridges specifically, like we saw a great example of what happens when you rely on a centralized entity to operate a Bitcoin bridge. The premier example of that is like Ren BTC, which I guess marketed itself as a decentralized Bitcoin bridge, but in reality, it turned out to just be a multisig, a team multisig, and I guess there was some sort of acquisition of Ren protocol by Alameda, you know, and obviously you can kind of see what happened when Alameda and FTX blew up. Is ultimately that bridge got turned off. And more recently, even the FTX estate has essentially, as far as I can tell, just seized the underlying Bitcoin, and they were able to do that because, you know, there was no actual decentralization there. It was, you know, again, a multi-sig controlled by a team. It was owned by Alameda. So now, you know, I think like if you're using you know, a centralized bridge, like you're just highly exposed to this possibility of, you know, not only just like, you know, potentially like a malicious rug, like, you know, if a team is anonymous or something and attempts to steal like the underlying assets, but also just you're starting to expose yourself to like the meat space fiat legal system. And kind of the, I mean, from my perspective, like the point of a lot of the technologies that we're building in the space is to avoid that and have just like ultra transparency. You understand how the protocol works according to these rules, and like you don't have this uncertainty of like who has title to the custody assets in the event that the, you know, the custody provider, you know, fails or goes bankrupt or something. And I think that's what's beautiful about tBTC is that like it is collectively custodied by a decentralized network of nodes, and it's, you know, there's basically, you're removing this, you know, this sort of bankruptcy or title risk to the underlying Bitcoin, which you know, as we've seen, is very real.
So, is there any way that tBTC could be shut down?
Yeah, I think that's a great point you highlighted, MacLane. Just to sort of piggyback off one thing there too, from a market perspective, I think folks are, you know, especially in this post FTX world, waking up to, you know, the importance of decentralized, or, you know, decentralized technology, but more importantly, decentralized assets, right? In the case of tBTC. And so, you know, the market opportunity for tBTC as we look to grow, you know, the partnership with Wormhole and bringing it cross chain and a bunch of other, you know, chains beyond Arbitrum as well, right? For us, we're super excited about what that will unlock, and you know, giving access to folks to a decentralized asset that they don't have to worry about, you know, any sort of custody or you know, rug pull kind of behind the scenes, right? So yeah, I think for us, you know, we're looking at this Arbitrum partnership as one of the biggest points, as a sort of a jump off point for beyond.
Yeah, I think it's really important that people have access to sort of decentralized financial operations with Bitcoin, because back in the day, in like 2014, 2015, the biggest risk you had dealing with Bitcoin was basically counterparty risk and exchanges. Exchanges were getting hacked left and right. And if you wanted to do financial operations
Yeah, that's a great
with
point.
Bitcoin, you really had no choice but to trust someone. And back in there, I was really into atomic swaps back in the day, which were like a very primitive form of cross-chain communication. Which I thought was really cool back in the day. But the truth of the matter is that the Bitcoin script language just doesn't really have enough flexibility to be able to do the kind of complex financial operations that you can do on a Turing complete chain. So I think it's really huge to have a decentralized version of Bitcoin on a smart contract chain.
Well said, Mike.
So ultimately, everybody's goal that's on the call today is to make Bitcoin.
Ash, are you still there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
I may have lost Ash for a sec. I don't know, Anthony, maybe do you have anything to chime in from the Wormhole side? Just in terms of how you're thinking about tBTC as an asset and integrating Wormhole, from a cross bridge scaling perspective.
Yeah, so I think for Wormhole, a long thing that the teams that contribute to Wormhole have discussed is having an asset like a Bitcoin that can go everywhere, and a truly borderless asset. And once we met and kind of really got to know the tBTC team, it was kind of an obvious thing that we wanted to do. And as infrastructure, doing that is the goal. And even beyond kind of what you guys were mentioning before, why does decentralization matter? I just think doing a centralized thing is easy as fuck, right? It's really easy to do a centralized solution, and to do it well and to do it decentralized is actually hard, and it's the only interesting problem to solve in the space. And I think that's why for us partnering with a team like Threshold and for tBTC going everywhere with Wormhole, it was just kind of obvious. So for us, and I'll just mention with Arbitrum, there's been a lot of cool stuff going on with Arbitrum, recently, and I think it's going to be one of these. There's a reason we started with Arbitrum, right? There's a reason we wanted to go there first and really kind of concentrate on launching there and getting things going there. It's a journey. This whole thing, right? Beginning now. Before redemptions are live and before all this stuff, I think this is the way we get things going, and I expect everything to kind of pick up and kind of go from here. So, we're just excited to be facilitating this and to be part of the journey and really just kind of, partner with all these great teams in this space like this. So, yeah, it's great.
Anthony, good point. So redemptions aren't quite live yet. Brian, can you tell us a little bit about what the Keep team is working on to get redemptions enabled? Do you have a little bit of a timeline?
Yeah, great take, Anthony. All right. Ash or Colin, do you have anything else you want to discuss on the spaces?
Yeah, hey Brian. I guess you can't hear, but Ash is live and loud and clear for me, and it seems some others.
Oh, really?
When you
Okay.
even come back, it usually fixes it.
Should I? Okay, I'll drop. I'll come back on here.
Oh, there you go. So I have we touched on it from several answers here, and in my mind, maybe I'm probably the newest one to the crypto space on this call, so it feels good to be able to ask the OGs. But it seems to me like we're talking about Bitcoin Plus here. We're talking about decentralizing Bitcoin. Isn't Bitcoin already the most decentralized asset out there? MacLane, you want to touch on this here?
Sure. I think Mike and maybe a few others touched on this briefly, but with Bitcoin, the chain, the blockchain, it's not particularly expressive. It's very difficult to build sophisticated financial primitives like Balancer, for example, or other dexes. It's difficult to build lending protocols. It's difficult to build all like the financial DeFi things that we like to use on Ethereum and Arbitrum and elsewhere. Of course, like holding native Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain is going to be always going to be like the most censorship resistant, permissionless, like maximally decentralized thing that you can do. But if you want to actually leverage that Bitcoin in some way to earn yield or to borrow against it or to do whatever, there's not really any good ways to do that in a decentralized, trust minimized way on the Bitcoin blockchain. Basically, people default to like using centralized lending platforms like BlockFi, which obviously can turn out very poorly. And what would be ideal is if there is a way to like sort of move that Bitcoin in a trust minimized way to these ecosystems where we do have support for sophisticated financial primitives. And so that's essentially what tBTC as a bridge is attempting to do. Obviously, like tBTC, by using a bridge and any kind of wrapped assets, regardless of how robust they are, there are additional trust assumptions that you're introducing over holding the native coin. But obviously, like our hope is that like we can land at a very good sort of trade-off between trust minimization and utility.
Okay. So you say, just a quick follow-up, you say that tBTC is a bridge, and I've heard that, pretty much from the start. But could you also define it as an interoperability protocol for Bitcoin?
Sure. I mean, I think like we generally like when we say tBTC, we kind of are conflating two things. One is like the bridge itself, and then the second is the tokenized representation of native Bitcoin on the other side of that bridge. So BTC is the native asset. You have the bridge, the tokenized representation of Bitcoin, wherever else that we go with Wormhole. We also call it tBTC.
All right, I'm hearing a lot of interference
Overload here
on your end, MacLane, but I appreciate your answer there. Ashley, kicking it back to you if you have some more follow-up questions.
I do. Brian, can you tell us a little bit about the technical implementation of bringing tBTC to Arbitrum?
I actually think that might be a question that Anthony on the Wormhole side would be great to chat about, and then I can kind of piggyback off that.
Great.
And I can hear you now. Sorry about that earlier. For some reason, the threshold account was quiet. So it's fixed.
That's
Apologies.
okay. No, you're good. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about the Wormhole side of this, which is, there's the tBTC team has built native contracts on the Arbitrum blockchain that can mint, tBTC, and then using Wormhole and Wormhole messages, basically you just attest to the state of Ethereum or whatever chain that that tBTC is being bridged from, and then basically you bridge and then. You mint the new canonical tBTC token on Arbitrum, and then it's there for use. And then if you ever do want to send it to another chain, if you want to send it back to Ethereum, if you want to do this, it's done so. Again, using Wormhole is like kind of robust, trustless, kind of guardian set, and then kind of like underlying trust assumptions of the chain. So there's probably a lot more you can talk about on the native contracts on the chain and the kind of architecture that you guys and the Threshold team went with, but on the Wormhole front, it's really just leveraging a lot of the infrastructure that's just meant to make communicating and sending assets and sending messages across a number of different heterogeneous blockchains. Not just EVM, but also like Solana and these other kind of chains as well. Like just doable. So yeah.
I have a quick question, if you don't mind. How do you manage risk as you go about deploying across many different chains? How do you manage like the risk of a particular chain being exploited from draining liquidity on other chains?
Yeah, totally. There's actually there's a number of different levers we have in place. So like it depends on. So there's all different ways you can bridge. You can bridge using like kind of the token bridge, where you bridge over like a representation of the asset, or you use messages to kind of like, you know, correspond or to talk to like native contracts on different chains. In that case, so I guess I'll just start with the token bridge. So a lot of people know Portal from Wormhole, which is like the just kind of like the, you know, like the token bridge that's built on top of the core messaging layer. And basically what we've done there, or what the Wormhole team has done, is built a couple layers of defense. So basically, like I call it like a Harry Potter, like, you know, style thing, where basically you have to do like you have to do a bunch of different things to like actually end up like killing Voldemort, right? So you have to like you know, like there's the Horcruxes and all this kind of stuff. So basically, one the yeah you
Well, I think we lost someone. Let's jump into. Oh, Anthony is back. Let's get him back up. One sec. Hey, Anthony. I'm not sure if you want to pick up where you dropped. So, Wormhole is powering tBTC's integration with Arbitrum, and it sounds like a whole bunch more chains are coming in the future. How does this help Bitcoin holders to put their Bitcoin to work? What opportunities are now available that weren't available a week ago before you could take your tBTC to Arbitrum? I've heard that we have a couple of new balancer pools.
Yeah, I think that's a great one for you know, our launch partners, Balancer, which was one of the first opportunities to earn yield on Arbitrum.
Yeah, and going beyond that, once you have liquidity on chain, you can slowly build off into other things. Getting DEX liquidity is kind of a first step to eventually getting listed on money markets, because on-chain liquidity is pretty important for money markets for liquidations. So you kind of slowly build up these primitives that allow users to gain leverage on Bitcoin, which historically really hasn't been possible. You guys probably won't want to crap on competitors, but I kind of will. I think WBTC is like hilariously centralized, and the naming of it kind of implies that it's wrapped Bitcoin, just like wrapped Ether, but really it's like an IOU token. It's so I think giving people access to like a truly decentralized and trust minimized Bitcoin in the sort of financial primitives that are on Ethereum and Arbitrum, I think will open up for a lot of opportunities that Bitcoin holders really haven't had before.
Yeah, and one other thing I would add there is we've seen this kind of meme that's been happening recently, where like people are trying to replace ETH pairs with ST ETH pairs, and I think in a way you could say let's let's try to well, I don't know, replace, but maybe add you know, tBTC wherever WBTC is, and that's why I think there's a ton of opportunity here, not just with money markets, but you know, a whole bunch of places in DeFi. tBTC can be added, and users can have a more decentralized Bitcoin option.
I think you touched on this all over the place. Everybody has, but how does the integration of tBTC into Arbitrum impact the wider DeFi space?
I mean, Arbitrum is the home for a lot of experimentation in DeFi primitives. So I think just being there, especially all the different perp markets like GMX, I think like that's pretty huge. I don't think you've ever been able, like, if we do eventually get integrated into some of those perp markets, I think there's some pretty interesting on-chain trading stuff that just simply would not be possible before, and also would not be possible on Ethereum just because of the gas fees and stuff.
Yeah, in general, Arbitrum is kind of becoming, I would say, like the home for DeFi, and a lot of the experimentation, a lot of the first DeFi projects are deploying there, and so giving them a more decentralized Bitcoin option, I think is great, and it means that that's what people will start using out there. And so, kind of what Mike pointed out, we just need to focus on getting more liquidity, and I think that a lot of these opportunities will start to open up.
Do we think that people love Arbitrum because of the lower gas fees, or what?
Yeah.
What do users love the most? What's the
Yeah. Okay, it's a good question. So, I think I asked this question initially when I joined the company, like why does Arbitrum have more adoption than some of the other chains out there? And what I found was a couple things. One, in the beginning, there was a period where all developers could build. So whether you needed DAI stablecoin, Chainlink, Oracle, Gnosis Safe, whatever, it was there. And then so by the time Arbitrum launched, there was already a bunch of teams building on top of it, as opposed to some of our competitors that chose to focus on a few select teams. And then after that, we started, really building out our BD team. Now we have, I think, close to 10 people on the team. Our team's very like crypto native, DeFi centric. And I think that's helped a lot. And so we've been able to expand and get more builders there. And so there's, it becomes like a virtuous cycle. So as we get more liquidity, more builders come. And even though we've been going against competitors that have like token incentives and a whole bunch of other things, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, what teams are starting to find out is that they're just getting better results on Arbitrum in general. We've seen this with like Lyra. We've seen this with Gains Network, which came over from Polygon, a whole bunch of teams. And so it's really translating into this, really prosperous ecosystem of teams building on top of Arbitrum and having success. So hopefully that answered your question.
It definitely did. So I'm not super familiar with Balancer. How is Balancer and Arbitrum, or the pools? What is special about Balancer and Arbitrum that's different from Balancer on Ethereum?
Yeah, so just as a general introduction, Balancer is a DEX, and more importantly, it is a generalized DEX, which means that you can build new invariants on top of the Balancer vault with like not having to rewrite the entire base structure. So it allows us to kind of iterate and move fast and expand with all these new sort of invariant innovations and stuff. And there are certain things that it's kind of, I'm going to try not to get too technical, but there are certain things that you really only can do on L2s where gas is cheap. When it comes to setting parameters for certain pools, like it's just infeasible to run this sort of stuff on Ethereum. It just costs too much to upkeep. But on Arbitrum, where fees are less than $1, we're able to do some really interesting stuff, especially in regards to our boosted pools and setting the ranges. Like I said, I'll try not to get too technical, but there's I would say the biggest benefit of Balancer is that we just have a lot of different pool types. We have stable pools, we have weighted pools, we have concentrated liquidity pools across a certain range through gyroscope, we have TWAMs. So we have basically this whole toolkit of AMM utilities that projects can take advantage of when it comes to structuring their own liquidity.
Thanks. That was a great answer. So this somebody's. Oh, I'm sorry.
I
Brian,
was just going to jump in there quickly. And Mike, I would be curious too, like just in terms of the user experience for, tBTC on Balancer with a couple of the pools that we've spun up. Just curious, like in terms of how to drive engagement with folks, or, what do you think is sort of the main benefits of tBTC, launching on these pools from a Balancer perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, from our side, I think another aspect of Balancer is that we have our VABAL system, which allows projects to sort of tap into BAL emissions in a really unique way in DeFi, other than just printing your own token on top of pools. So having tBTC on Arbitrum, I mean, really that's the only Bitcoin derivative on Arbitrum, other than like a minor amount of WBTC liquidity. So as currently in the works are a lot of projects that are building leveraged LPing on top of Balancer. So having these pools on Arbitrum will facilitate that. So I would say relatively soon you should start seeing protocols start implementing Balancer pool tokens as collateral, which will allow people to lever up and increase liquidity for tBTC and sort of give users options that they just wouldn't have elsewhere.
That's awesome. That's something we're very excited about.
Awesome. So we've all seen over the last few years bridges being hacked, huge losses. Can somebody tell me a little bit about the security of tBTC on Arbitrum? On as we take tBTC to other chains, is there anything that's in place that would limit an incidence's impact? How are risk managed, I guess. And I think Brian or MacLane, y'all would be great to answer this.
MacLane, you want to take that?
Sure. So the way that tBTC is approaching sort of cross-chain is one being, I think, very diligent about the cross-chain partners such as Wormhole that the DAO approves to mint, let's say, like canonical tBTC. So one of the interesting things that we've done on the major L2s, like Arbitrum, is there is like a canonical tBTC token contract that was deployed by the DAO, and the DAO can whitelist their third-party bridge providers like Wormhole, as well as native, whatever the canonical native bridge of a particular chain is. So, for example, like the native Arbitrum bridge, to mint against that token contract. And a lot of the motivation for this is sort of like a liquidity fragmentation thing. Like it's not a great outcome if, let's say on Arbitrum, you have like a proliferation of different wrapped tBTCs. So it's like a failure case if we have like a Wormhole wrapped tBTC, a different Arbitrum bridge wrapped tBTC, a different like Connects wrapped tBTC or whatever. Because obviously those are all technically different tokens that are not compatible with each other. Like you can't LP them all in the same pool. So having this canonical token contract owned by the DAO that can whitelist approved providers is the way that we solve both like the liquidity fragmentation piece, but also presumably the standards to get whitelisted for that minting contract are going to be quite high. So you have to have a good reputation, like a robust bridge, if you want to be a whitelisted minter. So that's partially how we're doing it. And then obviously, there's also things like we haven't really talked about it on this call, but tBTC has this for the optimistic model, minting model at least, has this concept of guardians who can on the BTC to ETH route, they can block or like reject invalid mints, for example, that aren't actually backed by a legitimate BTC deposit. And I think there's some interesting things we can do around reusing that guardian set to essentially like police redemptions from various L2s and other chains back to ETH to make sure that you don't have some kind of incident where there's some sort of exploit on an L2 or with some third-party bridge that allows people to kind of attempt to redeem basically fake tBTC back to ETH. So I think there's a lot of interesting additional protections that can be layered on over time.
Thanks, MacLane. That was a great answer. And is there another example I could look to of somebody else that's done something similar, or is a canonical token a fairly novel concept?
I am not sure if it's novel. I know that Arbitrum, I forget what they call it, but they have support for, I think it was maybe Peter knows, it's like custom gateways or something where you do have some flexibility in terms of what actually gets minted on the Arbitrum side when people attempt to bridge. So I presume there may be other projects doing similar-ish things, but I'm not, to be honest, I don't have a full view of what best practices are outside of tBTC for that.
Yeah, there's a few teams that are using the custom token gateway, and that's mostly because if you have some teams that have like rebasing tokens like LivePeer or others, then that's why they need to use it. But for most teams, they don't. They can just bridge their token over the bridge, and as long as it's on the CoinMarketCap or Uniswap token list, then they can bring it over. But yes, that is what we use, the custom token gateway side of things.
How does the integration of tBTC and Arbitrum help with tBTC scalability?
I mean, I think it just comes down to, again, like we want Bitcoin to be everywhere. We don't want tBTC just to be Bitcoin for Ethereum. We want tBTC to be Bitcoin for DeFi. And obviously Ethereum has the oldest and most mature DeFi ecosystem, but there are a lot of rapidly growing ecosystems like on Arbitrum we've talked about today, other layer 2 EVMs, non EVM chains, even in many cases that have one just like fast growing DeFi ecosystems that have benefits like lower gas fees, but also just because of like the lower gas fees and faster confirmation times and other features, basically open up different types of use cases. I think someone mentioned GMX earlier, and like perp markets, like that's a good example of something that is probably not really possible on ETH1, but you can do on Arbitrum. And so I think in terms of scaling tBTC and just getting as much Bitcoin deployed, deposited into the bridge and then deployed across DeFi in general, like obviously the more places and the more utility tBTC has, the more things you can do with it, is strictly a good thing from a scaling and adoption perspective.
Yeah, one other thing I would add to that is I think DeFi today is primarily used by a lot of crypto natives, and one thing that I've been thinking about, and I've also heard this from like Hamza from Polygon, which is like how do we get DeFi to millions of users? How do we make DeFi like running water? And I think the way that we do that is we work with regulated and entities that have more adoption. So these could be like self-custodial wallets, other solutions that are out there that can help retail users get access to DeFi and to utilize it. And so these are some areas that we're exploring on how do we grow Arbitrum DeFi to reach more users. And so in that scenario, you want to have it. If you have access to those solutions, you want to have a blockchain that's going to offer super low fees for those users so that they can have a fantastic experience. And as we've seen, when Ethereum has very high gas fees, it's not the best experience for users, especially when the fees are like somewhere around $50 to $100. And I think that Arbitrum's positioned really well to take advantage of that, to provide a great experience and to take DeFi to the next level.
When we say take DeFi to the next level, do we think we're like going to reach some Bitcoin maxis and show them that there are other opportunities?
I'm thinking beyond the Bitcoin maxis. I'm thinking of regular retail folks or even TradFi folks that are looking to bring real world assets on chain. I'm thinking, how do we bring it to the next million users that don't even know that they're using crypto, stuff like that. And I think by providing an environment where there's low fees, low latency, I think you can provide a great experience for end users in that capacity.
I agree, Peter. We are early. Bitcoin maxis are like a little tiny fraction of the world population. There are so many people that haven't even been introduced to Bitcoin yet. So we have a huge opportunity here. Guys,
Definitely.
I'm going to close us out with one last question. How do people get involved in the community, in building and aligning with our goals? For Threshold, it's come contribute to the DAO. We have a robust DAO with multiple working groups. You can come in, you can market, you can work on integrations, you can work on numerous things that will help us get adoption for tBTC. So are there opportunities like that with Wormhole, with Arbitrum, with Balancer also?
Yeah, I mean, at Balancer, everything is funded by the DAO. We have multiple service providers, and all the people working for Balancer work in sort of separate decentralized groups. So yeah, if you think you have something to add to Balancer, definitely come on the forum, come in the Discord, and reach out to us. There's always stuff to do.
That's what I like to hear, Mike.
Cool. I'll speak from the Arbitrum side of things. So now there is a DAO for Arbitrum, which is great. We finally have one. I would say it's still early days, but coming soon, TM is going to be a grants program, and I think that's going to be a great place for folks to get involved. They can also get involved in governance and getting delegated tokens for decision making. And then also, of course, there's other organizations in the ecosystem that are hiring. So my company, Offchain Labs, is hiring. Also, the Arbitrum Foundation is hiring as well. So plenty of opportunities to get involved in the Arbitrum ecosystem.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like great action for anyone interested in really any of these projects or DeFi in general is just what you can do, and this will make you sort of more legit than probably 99% of people in terms of being a DeFi crypto degen. Is get some Bitcoin, bridge it with tBTC to ETH1, go to Wormhole's portal bridge that to Arbitrum, get your Arbitrum tBTC, and then LP that in one of the balancer pools, and you will be, I mean, at that point you will be well on your way to being an expert.
Incredible. Do you guys have any last closing things that we didn't touch on? Thanks for entertaining all of my questions today. I really appreciate everybody's time and y'all's great answers.
We're all going to make it.
All gonna make it. Is WAGME a thing again?
Definitely.
Let's go. If anybody needs any help, MacLane just broke down the steps to bridge your tBTC, get your Bitcoin on ETH over to Arbitrum. If y'all need help, though, we're available on Discord. Wormhole has a Discord. Everybody has a Discord. We're all available. If you need anything, let us know. With that, I'm going to let everybody have a couple of minutes of their Friday back. I really appreciate everyone. Looking forward to tBTC becoming the Bitcoin for DeFi.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone, have a good one.